Do you remember a couple of years ago coming on this podcast?
Oh yeah, of course.
That's a nice thing. I like it when people remember.
Yeah.
How's life been? You all good?
Yeah. Everything's been good. We just got home from a tour of New Zealand, Australia, and Asia.
Wow.
So we've I thought I had wired jet lag before this return home, and I was sorely mistaken. I don't know if I've ever been that jet lagged before coming
Yeah,
back this way. But the good news is I was able to be jet lagged in my own house and
not in a bloody hotel or some other country.
exactly.
It's so good to see you, my friend. We came to see you. I don't know if you remember in Birmingham. I met you as you were doing the meet and greets as well. So I got a photo of you and said hello and shook your hand in person.
Yeah, you gave me a really cool limited edition pin that I still have.
Well, I had a horrible feeling you'd be like, "Oh, that's cool," then throw it away because I only made 100 of those. So it's like,
Oh yeah. So I got one of 100. I love that. Thank you.
yeah. So I'm glad you didn't just throw it away or put it on eBay. So, Brandon, welcome back to the Mark and Me podcast.
For having me.
It's so good to see you again. Usually, I start talking about growing up and your music taste, but this time, because you've already been on the podcast, I want to go straight in and put your mindset kind of back to 2001. And I think Incubus going to do Morning View at this point off the back of Fungus Among Us, Science, and Make Yourself was a really brave choice. Um, that year you had System of a Down, Muse, Radiohead, Slipknot, Tool, Jimmy Eat World, but you decided to release this album that I think people weren't expecting off the back of Make Yourself. And I wondered if you could take yourself back to that mindset of going into that studio and recording and not doing the kind of obvious album. I think you shocked a lot of people with the way you went.
Mm, thank you for noticing. Uh, we have had a kind of a stubborn ethos, for lack of a better word, uh, a stubborn ethos in this band in that when it becomes readily apparent of what we should do, that would be sort of like better for our career or better for the trajectory. There are enough of us in the band that are like, let's not do that. Let's see what happens if we sort of go the other way. Let's go against the grain. Or I've used this phrase probably too many times at this point, but I'll use it again. Like let's pet the cat in the wrong direction and see what happens, you know? Um, and so that not only went with like the way this album turned out, which has less to do with that stubborn ethos and more with an ethos of an overwhelming desire to speak authentically to
Yeah,
where we are creatively as a band. And I know I'll just speak for myself, but I know the other guys in the band feel this way too. Uh, we want to make music that is uh, is truthful, right? Even if we, even if by telling the truth, whatever that means in a creative sense, even if by telling the truth means that less people like us. Of course, we want people to listen to our band. Of course, we want people to like us, but not at the expense of our ability to sleep well at night, if that makes sense.
it's a good balance to have.
Well, I feel like you have to, in whatever realm of art you're in, if you are making art that's specifically designed for the market or a market, like if you're pointing directly at a demographic, to use the language of the more hardened people in the industry, um, to me, it's a kind of art, but it's more the art of capitalism,
Yeah, that's fair.
which it's like, cool, great, that's a thing. You could do that if you want to. Or you could use the opportunity to get out your machete and like go into the bushes and like hack your way through and see if you do, if you can find an oasis of some kind that no one had ever seen before. And so, I mean, I don't know if that's actually what we did, but that was certainly our intent. It's fun trudging through the bushes, getting covered in ticks and bitten by snakes, but then you find a place that you didn't know was there, you know? And sometimes you get to hang out there and then bring back little treasures to show your friends. And um, that's sort of been our experience of music. And it still is to this day. We could be, um, if we were smarter, maybe we'd be a much sort of like bigger band and would have lined our pockets sort of more over this period of time. But for better or worse, we're thrilled with literally everything we've ever put out. I know some of us in the band have some reservations about like our earliest recordings that we put out, but that has more to do with the fact that we were children when we recorded them
Of course.
um, than anything. We were learning how to uh, be songwriters um, in front of people. So
Doesn't it
those
feel
recordings.
more sincere, and you'll feel that the longevity of the band and your actual writing and creativity will last longer if you're doing the things you want to do? It would have been really obvious to go, Make Yourself was huge. We could just do a whole album of like 12 tracks sounding like Drive,
Mhm.
be millionaires and get to tour the world. But after a couple of years, I think your fans would see it and see it transparent that that's not really the way you wanted to go. That's not the way that the five of you at that point wanted to go because, don't know, you've always evolved. The thing I like about you and I like about Thrice and Paramore and people like this and Radiohead,
Mhm.
you never know what album is going to come next. You never know how they're going to evolve. And as musicians, especially with Incubus, you've all grown and progressed as you've grown older and matured, not just mentally, but musically. So it was the natural expectation as a fan to think perhaps it might be like Make Yourself, perhaps it will be quite, radio friendly. But then you came in with this beautiful, absolutely sincere album that I always think less is more. I think the guitar tones from Mike is not the heavy distortion, and the clean tones are more powerful and more heavy than if he hit an absolute huge overdrive and rock sound on his guitar. It sounded more powerful with the riffs because you could actually hear what he's playing instead of it just being a huge noise.
He would be thrilled to hear you say these words, and I'll tell him he said so.
Well, tell him to
Go
come on the
on.
podcast and we'll have a chat.
Yeah. No, I'm sure he'd love to talk to you specifically about that. Mikey is the least techie musician technician I've ever met in my life. He obviously loves playing the guitar and writing music, but he's still like super, super analog. He has very vocally stayed away from effects processors and um, all these sort of like tricks of the trade, which are kind of normal for most sort of rock guitar players. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I sometimes I've like tried to encourage him, like, dude, just use this thing, which makes it so much, you just hit this button and you get the sound you want. And I'm quite analog myself too. So I appreciate this about him, but he still uses the same pedal board with like his 30 pedals that he has, and he still finds new combinations
I
through
love it.
these sort of pedal configurations. And then sometimes he'll combine a chord that he comes up with a specific pedal combination, and it's a sound that you've never heard before. He's been doing that shit for 30 years. It's fucking cool. To me, that's really cool. And I think something that, you know, probably any band that you talk to, any artist, where the term cool is replaceable with authentic or true. These terms are kind of interchangeable. They're almost synonymous in a way. So when you're like, fuck yeah, cool. Oh, it sounded so cool. It's because I have not heard it before,
Yeah,
you know? And that's what you're looking for. But what's fun about the whole enterprise is that it's also it's a gamble. You're not sort of resting on your laurels. You're not um doing what is safe. You're not walking down the same path over and over and over again. And you could, but that's not cool.
what is cool anymore? Now I've said that word too many times with you. I'm like, so what actually is cool?
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's a great question. It could be argued that was it cool that this band Incubus re-recorded a record from 23 years ago that a lot of people liked, and arguably nobody would say that it was broken. Um, Probably not. And so
I
I
want to
think
come
that,
to that in a moment, but what I want to know is obviously if you take yourself back those sort of 23 years, and I know it's hard because we're talking today, but when
mhm,
you're in the studio, you're in Malibu, California, you
mhm.
can see the shore, you can hear. I'm sure that helped with the beautiful songwriting and the doing stuff like 11 a.m. circles, just a phase. Were you nervous, thinking, I hope this is going to go down well? Were you feeling brave, like these songs are fucking amazing, I'm loving the sound we're doing? Or were you kind of in the back of your head thinking, are we really fucking going to risk this album with our fan base right now?
I no, none of those thoughts entered my mind, and I can only sort of like observe in retrospect that it was because we were, in our mid 20s, and we were uh, on the in the wave of success from Make Yourself. So that part was exciting.
Yeah,
Suppose there should have been some anxiousness or nervousness about whether or not we would be able to repeat the success, or like continue the success and ride that wave, to use a very appropriate metaphor considering we're talking about writing music at the beach. It never entered my mind. It really didn't. We were kind of in our own little universe. And I think for most of our career, I can even speak to it today, I'll say again, of course, we want as many people as is possible to listen to our music. And we'd love to be uh, on the cover of Rolling Stone and all these things. I don't know how much that means anymore. Maybe it still means everything. I don't know. But this band has, for such a long time, just kind of been existing in its own little universe. And we create little universes together when we write music. And then when we go on stage and, the doors close and the last person comes in and we start playing, it's like we enter back into our own little universe. And there's something that feels right about it.
yeah,
And I suppose you could probably ask any musician in the world when they're in that kind of flow state, and most of them would probably describe something similar. They might use different metaphors, but you just what you're attempting to do, I suppose, in art is to uh, fill up the void with things that you would prefer to see or to hear or to feel. And this is what the whole attempt is. It's like, we this band has been inspired by countless artists and bands and films over the years. Um, and so you can point a little bit more succinctly towards certain eras, perhaps, but for the most part, it's just like, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool, this is cool. I don't know what this means, but I like it. This is neat. We kind of use it together in our studio, and then we spit out songs, and we like them. We wouldn't have shared them if we didn't like them. And so we've learned over the years that if we like them, if they make it past our cool test, that a bunch of other people seem to like them too, which is amazing. It's a really cool and really amazing blessing that something that we enjoy doing produces something that we enjoy listening to and looking at, and then we share it. And much of the time, people are like, "I really like this too." It's a very kind of neat phenomenon that I'm still uh, very much enamored by. I hope
Are
to
there,
continue.
my brain's going wild now. I'm thinking, are there a lot of songs that didn't get like the tick from all of you? So for maybe three of you were like, this is the fucking song. And then two of you are like, nope, I don't want it to go. This has got to be scrapped. Do you all then have a
Mhm.
vote, or is it a county? Unless you're all on the same page, it doesn't make the final mix?
We are very much uh, we have a democratic process in our band. The majority vote sort of goes the way, but it so rarely comes down to actually how many of you like this song. It rarely, if ever, I can think of like twice.
Yeah.
More often than not, there'll be song ideas that come into the fold, that are kind of fun and kind of interesting, and we'll work on them for a minute, and then they sort of fall by the wayside because everyone wasn't enthusiastically contributing. And we've learned it's sort of like a knee-jerk reaction for the most part to what becomes interesting to the whole band. And those are the songs that end up seeing the light of day. I write a shit pile of music all the time. I use the term shit pile because most of it ends up in the shit pile. And every once in a while, um, ideas that I have that were born of a, very rudimentary guitar riff, but have a melody and a lyric that seem to capture the other band members' imagination that will make it into the fold. Most of the time, it's like um, Mike will share a guitar riff, or Jose will play a rhythm of some kind, or there's a bass line of some kind, and it starts just there. And then we kind of establish a general tempo for what feels good to play it.
Yeah.
And then um, as a singer and a lyricist, I start sort of reacting to it. And that's usually how the songs are born. So yeah, but it very rarely ever comes down to how many of you like this idea,
That seems too professional. Like four against one. Sorry, it's not happening. Like, and there's a
which
whiteboard
has
where you all tick in and
yeah, which has happened, but it's been really, really rare. Um, I think that all of us in the band are very opinionated about music and about, certain aesthetic principles. But I get the sense over the years that Mikey and I are the most opinionated.
yeah,
And so any kind of creative clashes that have happened, real ones that have happened over the years, which I will state again, have been far and few in between, but the biggest ones have been between Mike and I. And they've been ideas that he and I brought in together, and they start going well. And then one of us thinks that they should go off in a different direction. It's like the two times or the three times it's happened in 30 plus years. It's come down to, all right, how many of you motherfuckers like the way I like it? How many like the way Mikey likes it? And then it goes one way or the other. And then we kind of forget, you
yeah.
know? Like we're not the band that
Well,
like
that's so
holds.
healthy, isn't it? You're not like there having a fucking fist fight or quitting the
Yeah,
band because your song didn't make the final cut.
maybe we would have been more sort of popular if we were the band that fought on stage. Like I think one of our collective all-time favorite bands, The Police,
Yeah.
were famous for doing that. They would just fight that shit on stage.
I mean, you think the
That's
rehearsal room should be enough, but if Sting wants
right.
to start beating the shit out of his drummer, then fuck it, why not
Yeah.
do it on stage?
And we all kind of love it. It's like
Yeah.
one part WrestleMania, one part cleverest songwriting in the history of the game. So it's like, what's not to enjoy? We're not that band. Like we've done, I think, a pretty good job, knock wood, of keeping most of our dirty laundry in the bin, so to speak. So
I was watching the documentary, you may have seen it, Dig, which is Brian Jonestown Massacre and the Dandy Warhols, and they tour together, and you see how one band elevates and blows up, and
yeah,
Brian Jonestown Massacre just basically crumble. And I was
right.
more fascinated in the way that they were falling out and fighting and taking everything to heart on stage in front of everyone than
Yeah,
actually the writing in the studio. That didn't interest me anymore. I was more like captivated by,
yeah.
wow, they just fucking literally hate each other.
hmm I haven't seen this documentary, but I've heard about it a lot over the years, and it's just like the reason I haven't watched it is more because I just am easily distracted when I get home, and but I've been meaning to watch that doc for a long time. But yeah, there's something to be said for spectacle, and I think that's what you're touching on is
Yeah,
that there's something that rock and roll as a medium has perhaps been really good at over the years, sometimes more authentically. Like sometimes we're able to peek into the world of where music creativity meets a genius level P.T. Barnum of some kind, and it creates a spectacle that uh, is entrancing to millions of people over multiple generations. Read like Queen or David Bowie
yeah,
or the Rolling Stones. And then there's countless examples of musicians over the years that understood the principle of spectacle, but then relied too heavily on it.
yeah.
And people at first, they're like, wow, it's like, eating an Oreo cookie. You're like, this is fucking amazing. And then you have another one. You're like, it's still really good. Then you have another one. You're like, I feel sick.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe I shouldn't have
And then
eaten that many
some moron
Oreos.
comes up and says, "Have you tried the double stuffed ones?" And you're like, "What? What? This is way
Exactly.
too much drama." Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's almost like an arms race in the spectacle of it, which, that's something that this band has never been terribly good at, is the spectacle part. We all kind of value our private lives.
I was gonna say you've
Uh,
either hidden it very well or it just doesn't exist within the band.
yeah, we've had moments, but sometimes there are bands that just their private lives spill onto the stage, and they happen to be incredibly talented musicians and writers, and it creates something, this exotic cocktail that becomes a spectacle of sorts and becomes legendary. So, yeah, it's all pretty wild to think about. Um, but what's really wild about it is that you would think that we would have seen some version of that, some spectacle of
Yeah.
sorts, spill over into the internet age, and it appears as if all of us have like too clever of an understanding of it, and so everyone is trying to produce spectacle, and then you basically, when it's everywhere, it doesn't mean anything. So to me, it's a really good time to be the kind of band or the kind of artist that is just being honest and being truthful, even if it's quietly in the corner, you know?
And you know what? That's not a bad thing. It shows your maturity and it obviously comes with age and experience of being in the band for 30 years. But isn't it better just to be at the party and not say anything, but still be at the party than be the dickhead who gets drunk and has to fall over and everyone talks about him the next day? I'd rather just go home, have an
Yeah.
early night, enjoy my bed, and think, actually, I enjoyed the same experience, but I'm not the
Mhm.
dickhead that everyone's talking about today.
Right. And you aren't dead as well because you fell off
Yeah.
the roof when you were trying to display
Yeah.
your golden godliness, and fell off the roof on
You're talking
acid.
about almost famous now.
That's a really amazing moment, actually, in that film. Not just because it's entertaining and it's funny and sad and all these things, but it's because it's actually a really good representation of um, what can go wrong in music stardom. One can start to believe their own hype and forget that they are merely stepping into a kind of archetypal role. Momentarily we step into these little roles. We put on a mask of sorts, and then tell the story around the fire and do the dance, and people are ooh. But then you take the mask off and you go to sleep. Some people uh, you know, take the drug and then they see themselves like, I am a golden god. Of course I can fly. And then it goes badly.
I love the scene the next day when he gets back on the bus and he's kind of realized he's just still the member of the band and
Yeah,
he's just cold and covered in water and just the shame on his face.
yeah.
And then we
And
have
everyone's
obviously,
mad at him. And yeah.
but then we
Yeah.
have Tiny Dancer and then everything feels great.
Yeah. That's a brilliant scene. It's a
Dude, you look
incredible.
at this. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but it's all happening is tattooed on my arm,
Oh, rad.
and
I
that's
love it.
Cameron Crowe who writ that had written that on my
His
arm.
handwriting.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that film means a lot to me, hell of a lot. I
Yeah.
always
It's an
feel like
incredible.
that's my job as well. I'm always the guy with the microphone. It's like, what do you like about music? That's what I always feel like I'm doing all my life.
Right.
And on that note, genuinely, dude, Morning View, I think, sounds timeless. I think it captures the youthfulness of your band. I think it's captured by the shore. I think it's captured by the location, but it doesn't sound like it was recorded that long ago. It still sounds fresh. It still sounds beautiful. And for me, hand on heart, and I'd say this if you weren't here, it's a perfect album. It's a masterpiece.
Thank you so
Truly,
much.
truly.
Thank you. I
Um,
much appreciate that.
so on the flip side, I'm kind of like intrigued of whose decision was it or whose idea was it that sparked up, let's go back and redo this album because obviously you've progressed as a vocalist, you've matured over time, you've all evolved as musicians. Weirdly, and I'm wearing a t-shirt, but Thrice have done it recently with one of their albums. They went in and did the whole of The Artist in the Ambulance again,
Mm,
re-recorded everything, the vocals, the drums, the guitar, because they weren't happy with the original sound. Dustin's reasons when he came on the podcast was, I hated the sound of my voice. I was too young. I feel like we've improved. So he wanted to capture it as they sound now when they're on tour.
Interesting.
And I was wondering if
Uh,
you were like-minded or if it was a completely different reason.
no, it's completely different. Though I am fascinated by that reasoning. So that I suppose it goes without saying that they were happy with the songwriting, just
Yeah.
not necessarily the performance of it, which
Okay.
I can completely empathize with. And I haven't A-B'd those records, but I will now that you've mentioned it. Our reasoning was there were a few things at play. The What sparked it was the sort of 20th anniversary of Morning View coming out. And weird sort of cataclysmic world event happening right on the heels of the anniversary of it too, which was strange because, right when we put Morning View out, right when we started touring it, I should say, September 11th,
Yeah, the
2001, we
World
were
Trade Center,
in the city, and
crazy.
the timing was kind of weird. And so, we were just doing a lot of reflecting on it. And so we decided that we wanted to do a live performance of the record, like from front to back, just to celebrate it. And of course, the whole world shut down. So doing that in front of an audience became a non-starter. So we decided to do a live stream with this really cool live streaming platform called Veeps, um, which was started by Benji and Joel Madden
Yeah,
from,
good
from
show that.
Charlotte. Yeah, good dudes too. We like them a lot. Um, and we, thought if we can, we'll go into the living room at the house in Malibu where we wrote and recorded the record, and we'll set up the way that we set up, and we'll do the thing. And we ended up doing it. It was a little late to the 20th anniversary. It was like a year later that we were able to pull it all together. But we did the live stream, and it was super fun, and we recorded it properly. Like we actually like recorded everything like it was going to be a live album, and that was sort of on the back of our in the back of our heads. Like maybe this would be like Morning View live.
Yeah,
And, we performed the songs mostly true to form, but as people who listen to Morning View 23 can tell, like there are some embellishments here and there. And so it was more like the way that they had evolved up to that point. That they're like the live versions of these songs, obviously. Um, and so we started kind of mixing it and getting this. I was starting to hear these mixes of this live performance, and it sounded pretty good. Um, Everybody's performances in the band were spot on. I had an okay day at singing that day, but it wasn't like my best work in the world. It was passable, but I was listening to these mixes and I was like, this is okay. Sounds like us live. Like we play music live every night, and some nights it's like fantastic, and some nights it's like passable. We're a
that's
live
fair.
band. We don't like cheat, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be Morning View 20th anniversary live. Okay, I like this as an idea. But damn it, I can't stop thinking about that. This wasn't my best night. Maybe I'll just re-record my vocals. Like no one would mind if I did that. No one would even know. This is
Well, and
like my
just
thought.
drop them in on the recording.
Yeah, because we had
Oh, nice.
everything.
Yeah.
And so I started to think that. And then I started to think to myself, why don't we just do that? We could like go in and like polish the shit out of this thing. And like maybe we'd even re-record it. And at this point, Ben Kenny had decided to leave the band, and then we
Yeah.
started playing with Nicole Row. And I'm like, and so that now there's this new factor where there's a new player in the band, and maybe we should get this would be a great way to introduce her, and maybe Mikey could like double some of his guitars, maybe I could double some guys. I started like lobbying, like, should we actually re-record this record? And then some voices from our management actually started chiming in. They were like, you have your re-record rights back too. So if you re-record this, um, you actually own the masters to these recordings.
Oh, I
And then
love
we were like,
that.
well,
It's a
there's
no-brainer.
there now, then it became a no-brainer. And then so we um really, we decided this is what we were going to do. And the hardest thing to record, I'm sure you've heard this from countless musicians, but drums are
Yeah,
the hardest to record there. Not because it's hard to record a good drummer, but it's like to get good studio quality sounds is challenging. I just saw this video of Steve Albini, rest his soul, describing why hi-hats were like Satan
yeah,
and how they ruin everything. I don't know if you've seen this video.
I have. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Anyway, we had recorded Jose's drums in that living room, and he knocked it out of the park. And so the drums you hear on Morning View 23 are actually Jose playing live in that room from that recording. The rest of it we re-recorded between a recording studio in Los Angeles and my house. I did maybe half the vocals at my house and then half of them in a recording studio. And so it just became a larger project and everyone got kind of excited about it and we really leaned into it. We let's make the sound as fucking awesome as we can today, you know, in late 23 to early 24 and put it out. And we didn't really think about what the reaction would be. We were just like, this seems like it would be kind of fun and counterintuitive. And so we did it. It's
Can
my
I just
long
say as well, I
answer.
know the drums are the hardest thing to capture, but when I was listening to the album when I first got like Virgin Records sent me like an advanced stream link, the first thing
Mhm.
I'd written on my whole pad of paper was best snare sound ever. Like the drums sound unbelievable. Like so well captured and it's beautiful. Like that's the first thing that stood out for me.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite things about the original recording was the way that the drums sound. In particular, and I've talked about this before, but in particular the snare. So the room that we recorded in is this big living room with vaulted ceilings and cathedral windows that overlook this beautiful yard, and then you can see the Pacific Ocean. Um, and the room, according to the owner of the house, was designed acoustically to host orchestral performances, but not necessarily loud drums in a rock band. So when you go in there and you start playing, if you just set everything up, it actually sounds kind of terrible. You have to
Really?
kind of you have to control the sound a little bit through some baffling and things like that. But there was no way to control the way Jose would hit his snare and it would like ricochet off these vaulted ceilings and the glass on the windows and stuff. But we figured out something and we were able to, for the most part, recreate it. Like you can kind of hear the room on both recordings, which I think is really cool.
I love all that sort of stuff. But going into it with the vocal takes, were you mentally trying to emulate what you did originally, or were you wiping the slate clean and trying to sing as you sound now to do the song's justice of who you are as a human being, as the 48-year-old instead of the 25-year-old who sounded more youthful, that sounded younger, that sounded for that era? You've obviously grown, you've matured, but I wondered, did you think, I want to sound like the guy I was 25 years ago almost, or do I want to sound like who I am genuinely now?
Theoretically, the knee-jerk reaction for me was to I'm going to do my best to recreate what we had here. And I very quickly learned that that was going to be um, not impossible, but not very enjoyable.
Yeah,
Um, there's nothing like touring for 20 plus years to give your voice like a gentle patina of sorts. So, and there's, nothing much to do about that at this point other than lean into it. And so what I uh, decided quickly after deciding that trying to recreate or go back to where I was as a singer when I was 25 was a fool's errand. It was a stupid idea. So I just leaned into where I am today, and it was a lot of fun. It was challenging in certain ways because, like we keep saying, like I'm not 25 anymore. I've lived half of a life, quarter of a lifetime since then, and but it was fun to do these songs with with that gentle patina intact, you know. And so it's pretty obvious. I think it's obvious to anybody that listens to this new recording that um, there is some natural aging that has taken place, but I don't mind it personally. The first comments I read right out of the gate when we first released Echo, the first single off of Morning View 23, the first comments I started reading really hurt my feelings, and it was stupid of me to even look at the comments because um, if we're to look at the internet as a phenomenon, it was like we created this technology that can like bring the whole world together, and you can access all of human information and ingenuity at the click of a button. What are you guys going to do with this technology? It's like, I'm going to take people down in the comments. It was like the first thing of the internet. And I forgot that that was a thing. I thought maybe like, oh, people will tell me what they think. And they did. And I was like, oh, fuck, I fucked up. I shouldn't have read the comments. Um, but I, all told, I'm happy with the way that it turned out. I think did I did my very best, and I listened to it, and I I like how I sound now. I don't mind that my voice has aged. To me, I hear it in the same way that I like see my hair graying in the mirror in the morning. It's like I fucking earned these. I earned these stripes, you know.
Look at all
I
mine in my beard. They're all starting to come through in the last 12 months. And I'm like, God, where did all these come from?
it starts happening fast, but yeah, my chin is like when I grow this out, it like turns fully white, and yeah, you earn those stripes, man. Like wear them proudly. And so it's the same with like a aging in our voice or aging in our body. You're just basically people can look at you or listen to you and be like, oh yeah, he's seen some shit. Cool.
I think sometimes people are a bit too precious and they feel like they own something that isn't theirs. And that's not knocking people, but I
Mm,
see it a lot. So I've read the comments and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Some are brutal and like, Brandon's not sounding like he used to. But also, if you go down those comments, people are like, I absolutely fucking love it. I love the way he sounds. I love the difference to echo and the ending and all these different parts. And the
mm,
people that are actually musicians or aren't just internet trolls are
mm,
really embracing the fact that you guys are, and we've talked about it already on today's interview, sincere to yourselves. You've not gone in and used auto tune and done this filtered, like radio friendly sound. You've gone in
mm,
and sounded like you are today. But
mm,
people feel like they own this thing, and I've seen it with Thrice. The first comment was like, Dustin should fucking leave it alone. It was a perfect album. And
mm,
it's like, well, we're the actual band. We're allowed to choose to do what we want. If we want to go and do a 25-minute instrumental track and put it out as a single,
mm.
we do actually have that creativity and ownership to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
you talked today about how Incubus have been influenced by films. Isn't it strange when you see a director's cut of a film come out, which is their vision, and
Mm,
everybody is just like, fuck this director, fuck this film, it's nonsense. And it's like, what gave you the right to criticize someone like Ridley Scott or Christopher Nolan, who are absolute geniuses, because they
yeah.
wanted to share their actual true vision with the world?
It's in a way, it's sort of a good problem to have people who had nothing to do with the inception or the creation of the piece of work feel that kind of ownership over it, because that means that they've invested a lot of emotionality and um, experience into it. That's a really wonderful thing. And
Yeah,
so if the shadow aspect of that is that they are highly critical, brutally critical of a different version of it that is born of the artist's vision. It hurts at first, but then ultimately it is a weird backhanded compliment.
yeah.
What I mean, and so that's where I landed after going through the emotional ringer of wandering through those first comments. Um, yeah, and the truth is that the whether it's in the case of Thrice or with Incubus, or as I'm told, Taylor Swift re-recorded one of her famous albums. If you like the original version better, like it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it is still available.
It's still there. Um, this is just a sort of it's like a bonus version. Think of it as a live album.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there are um, live versions of records I grew up loving where I ended up loving the live versions better. The recordings like aren't as good. The singing isn't as good, but there's something in like the spirit of it that is more attractive. And so I to me that's my version of the record. So I actually don't have a preference between
No.
uh Morning View 2001 and Morning View 23. They're just two separate entities, you know, and I'm really happy with them both. I love the way the original Morning View sounds. It sounds to my ear, I haven't listened to it in a really long time, but like uh I did A/B them when we were mixing the records, and the original Morning View has this incredible bass profile, this really warm record,
Yeah.
um, especially in headphones. There's something kind of magical about it. The snare sound, it does capture a mood, which, you know, is so wonderful. But this new one also captures a mood. It's something different. It's just a different thing.
I always think as well, if you're a fan of a band, and I'm a fan of Incubus, I'm a fan of all these different bands like the Beatles, anything extra that you get is a bonus. So me and my friend Darren, huge fan, he met you in Birmingham. We were really excited about this album coming out. We'd heard about Incubus re-recording, and the moment it came out, we were like texting each other, and I'm like, "Oh my God, have you heard the ending to Echo? How cool is that?" And like, listen to the different percussion, listen to the way that Brandon's singing, and I think that's Nicole doing the backing vocals, and we were like getting all excited, and it was like watching your director's cut. So my favorite film, Almost Famous, there's the untitled version, which is Cameron Crowe's longer version.
Yeah,
One of my favorite films as a kid was Tom Hanks's Big. It just is a nostalgia trip for me, but there's an extended edition. And I love sometimes just putting that on and just kind of noticing these subtle little changes or little bits that take away from the film or may add to it.
yeah, it's so true. Those are those are some of Nicole's vocals you are hearing. I got her to sing a bunch of the backups on a lot of the record. And back in 2001, it was all me, but I was doing my best to imitate a female voice because I liked the texture of it in
So
the
all on
background.
the original recordings, the stuff that sounds like a female in the harmonies for like circles and stuff is all you.
Yeah, the only one that actually is a female vocal is Are You In? A
Yeah.
friend of Chris's came in and sang some background stuff. But then when we re-recorded everything, I did the same thing again. Like I basically used my falsetto range and did the background vocals again. Then I asked Nicole if she would sort of give it a try, and I thought, oh, well, because she has a lovely voice,
It
and
sounds beautiful on the record. It's unbelievable.
she came in and she sang all those parts, and then what we did was we kind of like we we panned them. So on one side is her vocal, on one side is my vocal, and she's singing in her natural voice and I'm singing in my falsetto. And then in the mix, it created this new interesting texture. So it sounds a little more feminine than I was
Yeah.
able to do on my own being a guy.
But it blends so well. The fact that
Yeah,
Nicole's coming in as your new bassist and now also added this dynamic as a extra vocalist that can do it live as well. Like
yeah.
you've won the lottery there. Like she is very cool.
We love her. It was like an instant love affair with this person. Like she uh is a very different player than Ben Kenny. Um Ben in my eyes was always I see him more as a guitar player than
Yeah.
anything. Way he plays bass is very much like a guitar player. And then when left to his own devices, I think that he plays guitar almost exclusively. But um so Nicole plays very differently, but she's an absolute beast. Um, on the bass and does so enthusiastically and so effortlessly and with so much grace. And then and she sings and she looks cool and she's like a joy to be around. We the more we've been around her over the last year since she's been in the band, year plus, all of us are just like, well, we got really fucking lucky. This person's pretty
It sounds weird
amazing.
as well, like being an outsider and looking in on the band. every photo, every bit of footage you see, it's like she's always been there. It's not like, oh, who's this? They look a bit out of place now because I'm so used to the five guys in the band. And it's
Yeah.
like she's just slotted in. And to hear her on this record, I was like, this is beautiful. Like, I want to hear
Mm.
this live now.
Yeah, yeah. And we've been writing a lot of new music. Before we left for Australia and Asia, we had been writing for a few months, and we're jumping back in next week to continue writing what's going to be the next Incubus record. And so we've been writing with her over the past few months, and she's um, proven herself to be a real asset to that process. And the music sounds sort of delightfully different than it ever has as a result, not only of what she's bringing to the table in her uniqueness as a musician and a player, but also because what she's, I think, bringing out of us,
Yeah.
because we're whether consciously or unconsciously reacting to her, not only her presence, but her different playing style, and it's bringing different things out of all of us, which is really fun.
It must give it a whole new like lease of life, and you just must have this whole new excitement and different dynamic of the band now. It must be so exciting. It must feel like hitting the reset button a little bit.
In a way, it does have that. Yeah. We had we've been in the same sort of studio here in the San Fernando Valley for quite a long time. Gosh, the better part of 10 years at this point. And we it's just been like this catch-all from like touring stuff and old backdrops from stage and the same lighting and the same gear. And we would clean it up here and there, but it essentially looked and felt the same over the last 7 or 8 years. And I guarantee it's partly because of this feeling that like we're sort of hitting the reset button as a result of Nicole coming into the fold. We like tore out the whole studio,
Wow.
and we like completely remodeled it, and we're reconfiguring our whole setup as a band, and we're like pointing in at each other as opposed to our traditional stage setup. And this is to write and record. So these little shakeups, I think, become necessary in um, any creative endeavor. And sometimes those shakeups happen as a result of events in people's lives, things we can't control. And then, and those end up being vitally important to any creative process. But then sometimes we can purposefully shake the tree. We can go right to the base of it and with all our might go, all the kind of like dead fruit and dead leaves come off. And then you're like, oh, we've made some space
This is what's
here.
underneath, yeah.
Yeah. So that I feel like that we're doing that as well as sort of doing our best to mitigate the effects of the unforeseen circumstances that inevitably find their way into any creative process.
I kind of got to pick up on the fact that you talked about writing already and you're kind of at the demoing stage.
Hmm.
At this point, how is the direction of the band going? Like I said at the very start of today's interview, I love Incubus because I never know what's coming next.
Hmm.
So I don't want a big spoiler, but is it going heavier? Is it going softer? Are we expecting completely fresh new ideas that have sounded like nothing else before, or are you going a bit nostalgic? How's it kind of working out?
I think it's probably too early to even describe it. All I know is that I'm excited about the songs that we have already written and have demoed and are refining, and I'm excited about the new ideas that are kind of like piling on into the situation. Um, what's interesting about being in a band is that the you could demo a song, and sometimes the demo becomes the recording. Um, we when we put out Trust Fall Side B, which was the last recording that we put out, that EP, um, there was a demo of a song that just got buried in the process and got kind of lost. And I was looking for something else in my hard drive at one point before we put out Trust Fall Side B, when we were just basically recording. And there was a little demo and it said Our Love. And I clicked on it and I was like, oh, what? Where did this come from? Like, I completely forgot about this. And I listened to the demo, and it was just the guitar riff and my vocal, but basically the same arrangement. And we ended up keeping the guitar from the demo and the vocal. That's the that's the recording you hear on the
That's
actual
so
EP.
cool.
And so things like that can happen. And on the complete other end of the spectrum, a demo can be like a seed that becomes a completely different thing than you anticipated. Hence my reluctance to try and describe to you what this new music sounds like, because it's like some of it might sound like the demo sounds, but most of the time it ends up being completely different. Mikey always describes recording music like unwrapping a present because um, you have this idea, the seed of an idea, and sometimes the demo will be very, very developed. Like we'll develop it and record it to a point where it sounds like a finished song. And then we go in and track the drums, and a sound that happens accidentally will reveal another avenue that we decide to go down, or another rabbit hole we decide to, chase the rabbit down, and it becomes a completely different thing. So the truth is I don't know. I just know that there's already kind of like a, a surplus of songs that we're going
Well,
to be
that's
working.
healthy and that's amazing. And
Yeah.
fans listening now who are tuning in to hear about, obviously, the re-recordings will now be like, "Oh my God, new fucking Incubus music." So that must be, well, you're
Yeah.
excited by it, so that makes me excited knowing that
Yeah.
you're getting something from it.
Yeah. We are super excited about it. And the truth is that our hope is to have uh, a single out at the very least by the time we actually go out on tour this summer.
That's really exciting. Wow. And
Yeah.
is there any possibility of you coming back over the UK? It's been a couple of years, I think, at least.
Well, last time we were there was, did we come over this past summer?
No, I saw you, I want to say like 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. That's when I saw you in Birmingham.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, we played in UK this summer. We did a
Oh, yeah,
Europe.
you did. Was it the Eden Project or whatever it was?
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
The Eden
yes.
Project in Cornwall, which was that place is incredible. If you've never been, have you
I've
been
seen
there?
the venue, but I've never been to a gig there. But I've seen it from the outside. I was like, it's like a crystal dome sort of thing. I was like, that looks fucking awesome.
It was one of the it was one of the most happy places to step out of the tour bus in the morning that any of us have ever experienced. I think like you walk out and the dressing room is just like a little house, like a cottage, and then you take a golf cart down onto the property, and it is these massive biodomes. One is Mediterranean,
It
one
looks
is
amazing.
tropical, and then there's like a cafe and a museum, and then there happens to be a festival stage attached to it. The whole day.
Just next
Right?
to the little museum. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in Cornwall, which is so cool. So yeah. But the answer to your question, yes, we will be back to the UK and to Europe larger. Um, Hopefully sooner than later. I mean, we keep every time we're there, we vow to come back sooner than we are able to. But the only impediment being that it's far away and it's really expensive to get there with
Yeah.
our show, so to speak.
Because I know a lot of people I saw on Instagram and Facebook, like, are you bringing the Morning View tour to the UK or Europe? And I know a lot of people, especially with this release now, will love the opportunity to hear the album in its entirety live.
Yeah, we would love to do that. We would very much love to do that. It's just a logistical question.
And are you still finding enough time to still focus on your artwork? We focused a lot of that last time you came on, and we talked heavily about it. And I see you've done a lot of stuff with the gallery and new images and new pictures. But I was wondering if you're still getting a healthy balance to be able to do that, the yoga, a dog dad.
Uh, yeah, I've been definitely mostly focused on Incubus and recording and writing and obviously just being on tour. Um, Moonlight Arts Collective is, my
Yeah.
fine art print adventure, which is going quite well. So I'm constantly looking for new artists to who want to do um, limited edition print releases, and the idea being like that they're artists in some capacity that we recognize from a different part of the world, and they moonlight as painters or photographers. So that's been a lot of fun. Um, I I think we started originally this conversation, you and I, today with the perils of jet lag, and so I've been home a little
Yeah.
over a week from Asia, and I'm just starting to feel normal. So I'm sure my productivity will start to return. I've been a little bit of a zombie for the past week,
At least
but
we timed it right that we got you today and not like 5 days ago and you were just like, can we just do the fucking interview?
I would have done the interview with my head like on.
I was like, he's not as into it as he was last time. I'm like, I think have I done something wrong? Like, what
I swear
happened?
to God, it's nothing personal.
Yeah. And we said last time that me and you were going to form a band and call it Dog Dad, and we never rehearsed or anything, so we've let that project
Yeah,
go. I'm a bit disappointed if I'm honest.
no, there will be time eventually.
Maybe it's after Incubus when that's all wrapped up and you're like, right, now I
Right,
want to do something really serious.
right.
Dog
We'll
Dad.
only play in Cornwall too,
Every night for a month residency.
totally. But it has to be a dog-friendly venue because we're making music for dogs and their humans.
See, it's evolved a bit since the last one, so I'll get you back on next year and then we'll start actually demoing stuff.
Right?
I've got two more questions for you today, dude. I'm conscious of time. The first one, which is random as hell, but what I've started to do is with Cameron Crowe giving me this ink for my kind of celebration of him coming on the podcast. Have you heard the band Biffy Clyro?
Oh yeah, we've
Yeah,
actually played them a lot over the years in festivals in Europe and UK.
an amazing band, genuinely like unbelievable. And Simon Neil, the singer, came on for episode 300. And to
Hmm.
celebrate, I got his signature on my arm.
Oh wow.
And then recently, Thrice came on and I got their logo. So it's like a nice celebration of milestones.
Yeah,
Would you be honored to do a small design for me? Where I've saved a space here to have something that you design. I would love just to go here.
sure.
And I don't want to give you any kind of ideas. I just want you to just go, I'm going to doodle something. And that's what I think would be a celebration of us doing these episodes and having this kind of relationship we've built.
Absolutely. What's my timeline? Do you want me to do it right now
No, not at
or
all.
okay. Yeah,
I don't want
I'm
it to be
totally for you.
rushed, but when you feel awake, after we stop recording, I'll give you my email address, and then if you send it over, I'd absolutely be honored to have that on me as a kind of a celebration milestone of what we've done over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure, man. And I will do everything in my power to not do a dick drawing.
If I turn up to my wife and say, I've got that tattoo that Brandon
Brandon
did,
from Incubus drew me a
do you want to
picture.
see it? Look at the. He's even put hair on the balls. Like, oh fuck's sake! Don't let
Uh,
me have a divorce because of this. Because so
because of a bad
far, I've always
tattoo.
told her the first interview we did is like my favorite interview. I think I remember you retweeting it and like, yeah, it's great too. But I want to celebrate with something that's on me, and I think there's nothing better than something as personal as you actually putting pen to paper. And I know I
Yeah,
trust in you not to do a dick. Please, dude, no
you
dicks.
can trust me.
And my final question, you had this last time actually, and it was an astonishing end to the episode because you picked a Jeff Buckley song. But on the end of the episode, you get to choose a new song that's played out. And I think you picked Last Goodbye, which is probably my favorite Jeff Buckley song. That will Love You Should Have Come
Mm,
Over. And I remember when you
mm.
said there's this artist called Jeff Buckley, and I was like, oh, Brandon, like, you don't need to tell me anything else about this guy. He's the greatest. And I wondered if there's another song this time round by anyone that you felt was worthy of being the outro music to today's episode.
Such an honor and a tall order. I'm just going to pop into my library here and see what like some of the last things I've listened to are.
Jeff Buckley is a hard one to beat, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm not going to try and beat it. I'm just gonna ooh,
Have you got it down to like 1,000 songs now in your head?
exactly. There's this is going to be really random, but um there was a group, I'm guessing from my parents' era could be wrong about that, but just based on the way the song sounds in the recording. They're called the Crying Shames,
I've never heard them.
and they have a song called Please Stay.
Please Stay by the Crying Shames.
Mhm.
Am I going
It's
to now go down this rabbit hole and fall in love and discover loads of new music?
it's super like it's like sad and beautiful and kind of sappy and romantic, but it looks like it was one of the last things I listened to that I've listened to it quite a few times. There's just something beautiful about it. Once again, there's something very authentic about it and the way the singer is delivering the song.
Which has been the whole theme of today's interview, I think. Authenticity and making sure that things are real and true to
Yeah,
themselves. It's been the
imagine that. I also think that there's a reason why it's on the tip of my tongue is because there's um so much of the conversation culturally being around artificial intelligence, and um I've noticed a decidedly anti-human sentiment running through so many of our cultural conversations. And I want to do everything I can in my power to embrace technologies, but as long as they are in service of biological life.
yeah.
I mean, like humans are really cool, but all, other animals as well, other sort of plants and fungi and animals. But I think that to be pro-human at this moment in time is of the utmost importance. So when I hear things that have that gentle patina, and you can actually hear a human being saying them or performing them, and it hasn't been run through some uh, ridiculous filter or isn't a product of AI. Not that those things can't offer some amazing things, but when we sort of offload everything into the machine, I think that sort of frightening things can start to happen. So it's fun for me to see and hear human beings being human beings at our best. You know what I mean?
Well, this is no filters on us today. It's pure, just two people talking, and I try and keep it as pure as I can, so I don't do many edits unless suddenly a dog runs in the room or a doorbell goes. But it's been an absolute pleasure to have you back on. I can't really express really how grateful I am for your time. I truly mean this. I've done 349 episodes, and
Wow.
your interview was my favorite last time. There's just something magic. It feels like I've known you, and especially when I met you in Birmingham, and Joe was so accommodating with letting us sit on the side of the stage and watch your set.
Mm. Mm.
No one's treated me that well ever. And the kindness and sincerity of your band and just fucking going that extra mile means so much. So I'm really grateful, dude.
Thank you for saying so. And I really appreciate your time and your attentions as well, as do all the folks in our band. And yeah, we deeply appreciate it. So thank you too.